Perspective back after a long delay. I just had to move here, and there's been some other things going on, so I'm finally back to action. And today I want to discuss Mitt Romney proposing hazard pay, and the Democrats, much to my surprise, do not have not proposed hazard pay or have proposed hazard pay. Yet there's been no media attention to it, and I kind of want you to understand why there's been no media attention to Democrats proposing hazard pay. Mitt Romney proposed hazard pay. It got slight media attention, and yet today corporations get bailed out first. They do a small business loan program that really was partially those small businesses were large businesses such as Shake Shack and so on and so forth, and those type of businesses that are getting these small business loans and other people that are profiteering off of the misery that is caused by this very pandemic. So first, I want to pull up the article. I think one of the first people to report on it was The Hill, and the Hill reported. Sorry, guys, my computer is consistently underwhelming. Okay, so here we have Mitt Romney, Utah. The proposal, which Romney called Patriot Pay, would provide bonus of $12 an hour or $19.20 per month in May, June, and July. Healthcare professionals, grocery store workers, food processors, and many others, the unsung patriots of the front line of this pandemic, every day risk their safety for the health and well-being of our country, and they deserve our unwavering support, Romney said in a statement. Patriot Pay is a way for us to reward our essential workers as they continue to keep Americans safe, healthy, and fed. The measure would provide a $12 per hour temporary pay increase to individuals making up to $50,000 per year before being scaled down through an annual income of $90,000 per year, at which point it would be phased out altogether. So what? So this is awesome. This is awesome that Mitt Romney is proposing hazard pay, because hazard pay should have been in the first bill. It's one of the most blatantly obvious things that you could have provided in a bill. Instead of bailing out Boeing, instead of bailing out cruise ships, which don't even have their taxes registered in our country, that's where our money was going, $17 billion to cruise ships. No, we couldn't even get hazard pay in the first bill. So much to my surprise, I hadn't heard too much about hazard pay, because I think that's the way that the Democrats would like it to be, because they keep talking about these small business loans as a front to make it seem as if they're doing something for the American people, when really they're providing crumbs and they're forcing working people into situations of scarcity mindset where they are then forced back into work. And you see these riots happening, which is illogical on its face, but is only being intensified by the fact that these Democrats and Republicans do not want you by any means to be profiting or to even be sustaining yourself. So after doing some research, I came upon the Senate Democrats proposal, which is actually a little bit more to the left, which is as it should be, than Mitt Romney's plan. So I'm going to read that plan to you, just to be fair to the Democrats. So their plan is a $25,000 pandemic premium pay for increase for essential frontline workers, equivalent to a raise of an additional $13 per hour from the start of public health emergencies until December 13th, 2020. So they give $1 more. Okay, fair enough. And a $15,000 recruitment incentive for health and home care workers and first responders to attract and secure the workforce needs to fight the public health crisis. Okay. So let's go to some other important factors. Using a flat dollar amount per hour premium model in order to ensure it's a clear, simple, and lifts up particularly those workers making lower wages, would give each essential frontline worker $13 per hour premium pay on top of the regular wages for all the hours worked in essential industries through the end of 2020. So this proposal is longer than Mitt Romney's. I believe Mitt Romney's only goes until the end of July, so the Democrats want to do it all the way to the end of the year. So that's actually a really, really good proposal. But the fact of the matter is that this proposal, after I get done finishing reading it, I'm going to talk to you about why we don't have this approval, and it begs the question, why hasn't this been at the forefront? Why hasn't this reached the mainstream media? Why haven't the Democrats wielded their power and held this very plan, an actual good plan, over the Senate Republicans' head? And in fact, you have somebody like Mitt Romney, a Republican, who then they could probably find a middle ground in between this bill and the bill and the bill that Romney proposed, some type of middle ground, maybe not to the end of the year, maybe extend it to September. And I like this flat pay, a simple model, and the $13 an hour. I'm sure Romney would probably come up $1. It's not too much to ask for him. So anyway, back to this, it would cap the total maximum premium at $25,000 per year for essential frontline workers earning less than $200,000 per year, and $5,000 for each essential working earning $200,000 or more per year. And I think this is a really good thing to do, honestly, because Mitt Romney's plan, kind of in a neoliberal fashion, he is a conservative, but at this point, Mitt Romney would essentially fit into the Democratic Party. I mean, he might be to the left of Mike Bloomberg if we're being completely honest with ourselves. So when you look at this, this is also a better part of the proposal because the up to $200,000 a year, Romney's only goes to $90,000. So maybe they could find a middle ground of at $150,000 or something like that, and then keep that $5,000 per year for each essential worker earning $200,000 or more per year. Because if you're an essential worker and you are out on the front lines, then you probably should still be getting paid at some rate. Now, it would be kind of hard because I don't know how many frontline workers there are that are going to be making over $200,000 a year that would even really qualify this. So it wouldn't really matter. But I think this, once again, incentivizes what I consider to be the universality principle. My bad, I cannot speak. I haven't done a podcast in a while, but the universality principle, which basically gets to the point of that these are rights that humans deserve, and this is not a handout to the lesser. This is just a fact of being an American citizen. This is the fact of basic humanity. And so I think that universality stops stigmatization and tries to, and kind of breeds fosters and breeds the idea of camaraderie and brotherhood within and sisterhood within a community, and not so much looking at each other as competitors, or I got this and you didn't get this, and I didn't need this and but you did this. And while they're not getting the same amount of money, the fact that these people would still be getting some amount of money, I think would massage the stigma that may be associated with the hazard pay, even though there shouldn't really be any stigma associated with the hazard pay, but just talking about universality in general. So yeah, so that's basically the main parts of that. The main parts of that bill. And once again, as I'm saying to you guys, this stuff is basic, like, understanding. Like, in the first bill, we should have had hazard pay. What happened in the first bill? We got $1,200, which literally for 50% of the country, if you live on either coast, or you live in certain cities, or you live in even in the rural areas of Oregon, because I think it's a rural city divide, but really it's a coast. There's places throughout the country that just have different housing prices, different housing indexes, different cost of living prices, and that $1,200 might fare well for somebody in Kansas, but for a huge majority of the people, because most people are concentrated in cities, that $1,200 did not go far enough. And myself, as somebody who was a server, lost their job in Middle America, I have not been able to receive any employment and benefits. I haven't been able to receive any employment benefits. Just as 70%, a survey was done that 70% of people have not received their unemployment benefits. And I've talked to multiple people who also have not received their unemployment benefits. So America is suffering. But what this did is somebody like my mom, who is still working, who works in healthcare, she is working, and she still lives in a lens that's kind of was determined by the neoliberal mindset that we live in. Because she's a little bit older, she's like just into her 40s, so she's a Gen Xer, and so she kind of had that stigmatization, saying like, oh, well, why do these people get this much money, the $600 a week, which if it ever arrives, but the $600 a week, well, I have to go out and work in healthcare and get no money. And that was completely right. There should have been hazard pay in the first bill. So let's go and listen to Nancy Pelosi talk about her just wonderful strategy, her wonderful political strategy. And this is going to be a hard conversation to watch. I'm going to skip around a little bit in it, but we're going to start at 2:45 here. And we're going to see what Nancy Pelosi has to say about the fourth or third and a half coronavirus bill that still does not provide hazard pay. And I want to talk about how we still do not have hazard pay. How do we not have hazard pay at this juncture? Yet Nancy Pelosi is going to come out here, be condescending, and try to muscle around Jake Tapper, who is a feckless commentator and who is beholden to the Democratic Party because he succumbs to Nancy Pelosi in this video. So let's take a look at what Nancy Pelosi has to say and just how vile and elitist and classist this woman is, and how she continues to gaslight America, and the Democrats continue to gaslight America into thinking they're any better than the Republicans.
will have state and local in the next bill. The administration would not do that.
Well,
despite Chuck Schumer
let's talk about that because you and Senator Schumer made this major concession on the most recent legislation because you made it okay in this one for the.
It wasn't a concession.
No, well, I mean, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
I understand what Andrew Cuomo said, and I respect his perspective as a governor. But the fact is this: they wanted $250 for the PPP. We support the PPP. We're part of developing it. Small business is entrepreneurial, part of the optimism of America. So we're for that. But we wanted to include more people and more money for the program and for the hospital. So it was always an interim bill. It was always an interim bill. We always said that CARES 2 would be the bill where we would go for state and local.
Right.
And we will in a big way.
I get that, but I just want to play for you the sound from New York Governor Cuomo because he said he needs money for his state to save New York from an economic tsunami. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We've been talking about funding for state and local governments, and it was not in the bill that the House is going to pass today. They said, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, the next bill. I said to my colleagues in Washington, I would have insisted that state and local funding.
And let's talk about that because he's talking about state and local funding, which they do need to have state and local funding. And what Andrew Cuomo is saying, even though Andrew Cuomo is getting way too much praise right now, it's right. That don't worry, don't worry, don't worry mindset. That don't worry mindset has been told to the states, which are just a body that is conceptually made to represent the people. Yet, before that, we've been considering, this is the fourth bill we are on right now, and it's continually, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. How are you supposed to not worry if you have to go to work and fear for your safety, yet these companies that are still in business are raking in record profits like Amazon, Target, Walmart, other grocery stores, other services that are essential right now are raking in record profits, yet the workers are seeing little to no benefit from this and are putting themselves at risk. And the people who are unemployed are getting $1,200 because this unemployment is not coming. I haven't even gotten the $1,200 stimulus myself, and I also have not gotten my unemployment. And I think this is a common occurrence around the country. So if there's people who have not gotten their $1,200 check, there's people who have not gotten any unemployment, and these people are continually told, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. How are we not supposed to worry? How is that fostering anything? And this is leading to the mindset, an unfortunate mindset of Americans wanting to reopen the economy. Because if you listen, the COVID, we are going to have to reopen the economy. That is unquestioned. There is a gray zone when you open it, but that gray zone only gets shifted. The perception of that gray zone only gets shifted when you put people into a scarcity mindset, forcing them to go back to work, forcing them into this mindset, this American mindset that it's just we have to get ours and go get it. When in the matter of fact, as I will show later in this video, there's many other people who are getting their money at a much greater value and at a much less steep cost.
Funding was in this current bill because I don't believe they want to fund state and local governments.
So Cuomo says he would have insisted on state funding in the last bill. And now Senator McConnell is saying he wants to push the pause button. Yes. Was this a tactical mistake by you and Senator Schumer?
Just calm down. We will have state and local, and we will have it in a very significant way.
Okay, let's just take a moment and just pause and just really come and appreciate, this is kind of for humor, appreciate Jake Tapper's face throughout this entire process and the face that he will continue to make throughout this process. He knows, and these people have been trained to do this like newsman face of pretending this stoic face as if they are not reacting to what they're saying. But what Jake Tapper knows and what everybody knows is Nancy Pelosi is lying through her teeth. Nancy Pelosi is lying through her teeth, and he asks a valid question. Is this a tactical mistake? Yes, this is a tactical mistake. Nancy Pelosi thinks she's some wizard of negotiating, yet the Republicans are outbidding her every time. The Republicans knew that they didn't want to provide these states with as much funding as they could because they're so damn conservative and they're just okay with people dying, and so they undersold what they were going to give people, and they say 250 billion, and it ends up coming up to 450 billion. Yeah, they were probably shooting for around that, give or take 50 billion. They were probably shooting for between 400 to 500 billion dollars. So in reality, the Democrats once again get conned into this bill, and the whole time you have to ask yourself, is this a tactical mistake? Is this a tactical mistake? This cannot be a tactical mistake. Nobody can be this inefficient, this ineffective at what they are doing if you've been in Congress for this long. This is by choice. This is by design. This is not a bug. This is a feature. These people do not want to help the American people. These people, Democrats and Republicans combined, two birds of the same wing, want to push people back into work. And it just comes down to it as the Senate voted 96-0 for the first coronavirus pill that provided no hazard pay, did not provide enough universal income as expansive as it should be. And you see this by Democrats such as Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi herself only offering $500. It was actually Mitt Romney, coming back to Mitt Romney, who proposed the $1,200. The Democrats could barely propose that. They were proposing $500 a month, and whether or not that would even arrive. So the Democrats are proposing just as much, if not less, than the Republicans. And so you have to understand that these are the two wings of the same bird. These people do not have your best interest at heart. She's saying calm down because he's exposing her, and it's so easy to expose her because it's just so obviously logical to have these things in the first bill, to keep doing these bills. If the Democrats had any notion of how to argue, they would have stood up. And this goes to Bernie Sanders. This goes to any progressive in the House or in the Senate. You guys got tricked by the Senate Republicans into thinking that if you did not pass this bill, the American people would be against you. Well, guess what? I still haven't gotten $1,200. 70% of America hasn't gotten their unemployment benefits. And so the first bill that you were so worried about passing, that didn't include hazard pay, that didn't include enough money to actually pay anybody's rent while they're waiting for this unemployment to go through. These things that were not included were to the expense of the American people. And what was included? A $500 billion slush fund that can be leveraged into $2 trillion for big businesses that the American people have been told relentlessly, keep your finances in order. Keep your rainy day fund in order. Okay, if something happens to you, if something bad happens, it's on you to have that savings account. Yet these companies, you're trying to tell me billion-dollar companies didn't have any money the instant that the economy closes for 2 weeks? They are begging for bailouts. And what do the Democrats and the Republicans do? They go to their corporate masters and they do their bidding. Trump just waived the stipulations of oversight for that bill. How are you even going to pass a bill that had the ability to waive those stipulations? That is disgustingly sad in itself. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, any Democrat should feel ashamed of what that bill was and how they are being played. And how they're being played by Senate Republicans. Whether you not like Republicans or not, it's already known that Republicans are vile. Most Senate Republicans, politicians are vile. Let's just be honest. Not the people that may be conned into believing in them, but those Republicans do not care about people. And so when you have to compare a party to the Republicans, it really begs the question of what are we comparing it to? What difference are we really seeing the Democrats provide? Because they capitulated to the Republicans as they have time in and time again. And the people on the front lines are not being paid properly. And the people that are sitting at home with no jobs are being forced into a scarcity mindset to push them back into work, just as the corporate masters would like it. They got their bailout money. They're going to suck up small businesses. And now they want the workforce back because they know that the workforce is the heart of their companies, whether they want the American people to believe that or not. So let's continue on with Nancy Pelosi just gaslighting the American people.
It's no use going on to what might have been. The administration never even wanted to do. Let me We kept this for you. When we said we're not doing 250 unless you open the door for these lower, unbanked, we call them unbanked.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead here. Basically, she talks about her questionable tactics, but I just want to come into another part of the video where Nancy Pelosi kind of gives the jig up. And I kind of want to then address something post this to show you how terribly this bill was written and how these Democrats did not even read the bill. That the first bill that went into this and the subsequent bills that have came out of it that still have not provided the proper rent cancellation, the proper hazard pay, and other things that will lift up the American people. Because as the priorities always are in America, based on American politics, it's always corporations before the people. It's always the ultra wealthy before the people. And then the people begin to be pitted against each other. And a divide and conquer strategy as old as this country continues to live on.
They don't want to see any buybacks, any corporate increases in pay, bonuses, dividends, and the rest of that. That makes them very angry. And we have oversight to do all of that. Protect our heroes.
Okay.
Support our
Okay, the video apparently is unavailable now. I think it may have gotten removed potentially, and because I've just had this video loaded up, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But essentially, Nancy Pelosi goes on to talk about protecting our workers and goes on to this big spiel about how she needs to protect the workers. And as I've been basically reiterating and just hammering home, and I might sound like a broken record at this point, but it's just absolutely disgusting at what the Democrats have allowed to happen in this bill. And Nancy Pelosi continues to gaslight America as if though they didn't have the power. As if they don't hold the House to. Now, a real tactical move in this situation would have been to say, we're giving people $2,000 a month, we're putting a mortgage and rent freeze, and we are giving hazard pay. And that's the whole bill. There is no corporate slush fund. That corporate slush fund, that comes second. If these corporations, it shouldn't be a slush fund, but if there's going to be a bailout for corporations, fair enough, but that comes second. Workers come first. The Democrats do not know how to negotiate. They should have split that bill, held it over the Republicans' head, went onto the mainstream media, and screamed to the top of their lungs that the Republicans did not want to give people their hazard pay, their universal income, and the rent that was needed to sustain this crisis, and say the Republicans want this other bill because they care about corporations. The Democrats did not do that because the Democrats also do not care about the people. The Democrats also, the leadership of the Democrats also are beholden to their corporate masters. So I want to come back to that first bill and how much gaslighting is really going on with the Nancy Pelosi. So while Americans have this mindset of like Americans just hate getting handouts for whatever reason, they think that as if though their labor has not been exploited, as if they have not been exploited by the system that they are in. They want to do everything, pull you up by the bootstraps mentality. So some Americans might not even like the fact that they're getting this $1,200. But let's look at a part of the bill that kind of became known after the fact, and that was and this is in Forbes. So how some rich Americans are getting stimulus checks averaging $1.7 million. So within that first CARES Act, it temporarily suspends a limitation on how much owners of businesses formed as pass-through entities can deduct against their non-business income, such as capital gains, to reduce their tax liability, according to the Washington Post. The Joint Commission on Taxation report requested by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Representative Lloyd Doggett concluded that suspending the pass-through limitation would cost the government over $90 billion in 2020 alone. Critics have argued that the benefits disproportionately occurred to wealthy individuals, including hedge fund investors and real estate business owners, and the JCT confirms this. So when we go down to it, this chart here shows of how this works, and that 81.8% of the benefits that are a result of this taxation, of this limit not being imposed anymore go to households making over 100 or making over $1 million, which amounts to about 43,000 taxpayers in America. So much for the American dream. Keep that in mind as well. And and another thing to keep in mind about that bill and about the fact that these Americans are going to be able to get tax rebates at the end of the year for $1.7 billion or $1.7 million in savings. This is on average. There's going to be certain people that are getting more than 1.7 million. There's going to be certain people over $1 million getting a little bit less than that. But that's the average amount. So if you think about that, there's 50% of the people that are getting more. So you're trying to say there's 20,000 people that are already rich beyond belief, that can already suck up wealth, that are getting over $1.7 million in benefits. Well, the American people can barely get $1,200 that cannot even arrive on time, cannot get their unemployment, cannot get hazard pay. And the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi have the audacity to pretend as if they're doing jujitsu in the Congress, as if they're actively fighting for the people. Yeah, so the moral of this whole video is look at what these politicians are doing, understand that they are sheeping you into this two-party system, sheeping you into believing that this is all that we can offer, that this is all we can do. And this is leading to the outcries about the coronavirus, the need to get back to work. And yes, the virus is ramping down, but if we do not ease into this properly, we are going to see more deaths. And people that are sick are going to end up once again going back to these jobs that open because they cannot afford to stay home anymore. These people that were staying home for 2 months and now can finally go back to work, if they do eventually become sick, they're going to stay at work. Do you know why they're going to do that? Because they haven't had any money in 2 months. So once again, the Democrats are going to provide socialism for the rich, and they're going to provide rugged individualism for the poor, just as it's always been in American politics, and just as these Democrats want it to be. And they're going to continue to tell you that that they are the party of the people because they speak a little bit more flowery of a language than do these Republicans. But when the mask is truly ripped off, they are no more than the same entity that these Republicans are. And they do not care about the American people. They care about their corporate masters and their ability to sustain power in the political arena. All right, guys, it's going to be the conclusion of the video. So once again, if you guys could like, share, and subscribe, that would be completely appreciated, especially since I know this channel is super small and I'm really trying to eventually make it so I'm not seeming to be just speaking to myself. I'd like to get my message out there, and if you guys appreciate this message, I would really appreciate that you share it, and just keep your head up in these hard times, and have some solidarity with your fellow person, because you will always be closer to being poor than you will to being a billionaire. That's just statistically the case. So once again, have some solidarity with your brothers and sisters in America. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.